Every ceasefire is literally just a piece of paper right up until it actually changes things on the ground. Picture this, a room, a 60-day clock ticking down on the wall. Well, that clock has just hit zero, and all that's left sitting on the table, an expired document. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the Islamabad Memorandum. It's an agreement signed remotely back in mid-June by the presidents of the United States and Iran, and it totally failed to convert a temporary pause into a permanent settlement.
60 days. That was the window this document created. And, well, that window has officially hit zero. When asked if he'd actually seek an extension to this 60-day period, President Trump, according to reporting from that day, gave a pretty definitive one-word answer: no. So there's no final agreement. The negotiation period just lapsed. It completely ran out, basically leaving both parties stuck holding on to their exact original positions.
Now, absolutely crucial point right off the bat, this explainer isn't about who's right or who's wrong. We are stepping completely away from the political rhetoric here. Instead, we're going to look strictly at the math and the actual mechanics of this lapse document, totally neutrally. We really want to examine exactly what was written down on this page that expired on August 17th, what each side claims those words meant, and honestly, what even exists now in the space where this agreement used to be. So here's our agenda for a quick forensic deconstruction of this document. We'll hit the expired 60-day window, look at the 14-point ledger, break down point 5, check out the disputed timeline, touch on oil markets and the Strait, and finally wrap up with what to watch next. Let's get to it. First up, Section 1, the expired 60-day window. To really understand why this failed, we kind of have to understand what this instrument actually was to begin with. A memorandum of understanding? It is not a finalized peace treaty. It doesn't pass a legislature. It's basically just a shared statement of intent, right? Like a schedule. Mediated and hosted by Pakistan, which, by the way, is exactly why it carries Islamabad's name, this whole framework was designed to simply freeze the fighting on all fronts. The goal was to buy exactly 60 days to hammer out a permanent internationally endorsed deal. But as we know, that conversion literally never happened. Moving on to Section 2, the 14-point ledger, which brings us right to the specific promises actually written inside this document. And wow, let's just look at the massive economic and security stakes sitting on the table here. For Iran, this ledger promised the immediate lifting of the U.S. naval blockade, Treasury export waivers, plus the conditional release of frozen assets. It also included a massive, game-changing commitment, a $300 billion with a B dollar reconstruction plan backed by Gulf states. Now, for Washington, Iran reaffirmed it would not develop a nuclear weapon, and they agreed to downblend, basically dilute, its highly enriched weapons-capable uranium. And this was all supposed to happen under the on-site supervision of the UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. But take a really close look at those bottom items on the list, that $300 billion plan and the full UN sanctions termination. Those were parked in a future document that, well, it never actually got written. Now, sitting right between those two columns was this absolutely critical middle ground agreement. It stated that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened toll-free for 60 days. This right here was the mechanism meant to temporarily stabilize the entire region, and, honestly, the global energy markets, while that larger permanent deal was being hammered out behind the scenes. All right, Section 3, breaking down point 5. Here is where the entire framework completely shattered. You see, ceasefires rarely fail over the whole document, right? They almost always shatter over a single clause. And in the Islamabad Memorandum, that was Clause 5. It's fascinating. Two governments signed the exact same sentence, yet somehow walked away with completely, entirely incompatible interpretations. Tehran's reading, as reported, is that Point 5 confers on Iran the right to actively manage the Strait of Hormuz. Washington, they completely reject this interpretation because, let's face it, a strait isn't just a body of water. Administering it is a massive matter of sovereignty, global commerce, and ultimately having your hand on the global energy valve. So it really begs the question, how on earth did 60 whole days get entirely consumed by a single clause? Think about it. Instead of using that precious 60-day window to resolve the really big final issues, like unfreezing those funds or finally securing freedom of navigation guarantees, the whole negotiating window was basically wasted just arguing about what the interim text already meant. The 60 days were completely eaten up by a dispute over a sentence they had both already put their signatures on. Which brings us to Section 4, the disputed timeline. This specific deadlock led to what is arguably the strangest procedural fallout of the entire deal, a fundamental disagreement over time itself. No, really.
Washington treated August 17 as a hard terminus, as in boom, the clock expired. But Tehran's position, they say the 60-day period never even began. They argue that the initial conditions required by the memorandum were never actually delivered. It's kind of like arguing over the final score of a soccer game when you can't even agree if the referee ever blew the starting whistle. So now you've got two capitals, one expired piece of paper, and literally two totally different readings of a clock.
So what exactly does reality look like post-deadline? Well, the language has severely hardened, for sure. Reporting from the day of the deadline notes President Trump telling Fox News that Iran should essentially put up a white flag of surrender. Meanwhile, a senior Iranian official bluntly told Reuters that Tehran has shifted from a defensive to a fully offensive posture. On top of that, Iranian statements confirm the Strait remains completely closed. And as of right now, there is absolutely no successor text scheduled to replace the expired memorandum. None.
That leads into Section 5, oil markets and the Strait.
Let's pivot away from abstract diplomacy for a second and look at tangible, on-the-ground reality. Before this war broke out, the Strait of Hormuz handled roughly 20%, that's 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply. That's a massive amount of oil. And you cannot simply reroute that kind of volume quickly via existing pipelines. It's just not possible. This strait isn't just some political line on a map. It is a vital beating artery that directly dictates global inflation and, yeah, the price you pay at the pump every day. Let's look at the timeline just to ground ourselves in how long this has been impacting the world. Reporting officially dates the opening of this wider war to February 28, 2026. That's when U.S. and Israel operations first launched. Then, the memorandum was signed in mid-June. And, of course, it expired on August 17th. So, if you're doing the math, that makes this a 6-month conflict. 6 months with a major global choke point, totally disrupted, and currently absolutely no diplomatic resolution anywhere in sight. Which leads us directly to this huge number, $91. The day after the expiration, on August 18th, Brent crude hit roughly $91 a barrel. But here's the thing you need to understand. This price isn't just measuring physical damage to infrastructure. It is measuring the market's risk premium. When those diplomatic signals completely vanished with the expired document, the market immediately priced in all that uncertainty. When a negotiation falls apart, what replaces it in the price tag is a massive risk premium, with nothing left on the table to actually resolve it.
Finally, Section 6, what to watch next.
So with the instrument totally expired, the clock completely dead, and literally no scheduled forum lined up, we really have to look past the podium speeches. Here are the 3 concrete, non-rhetorical things you absolutely need to monitor going forward. First, keep an eye out to see if any successor text is tabled by anyone, anywhere. Second, closely monitor any slight language shifts from either capital regarding point 5. Remember, that sentence is the load-bearing variable for any future deal. Actually, scratch that. It's the foundation. Nothing works until both sides agree on what it actually means. And third, track the actual physical shipping data in the Strait.
Which brings us right to our final thought for today. Price is opinion, but transit volumes are fact. Ultimately, what these parties are actually doing is going to be revealed by the massive ships moving, or more importantly, not moving through the water, completely regardless of what any politician says to the press. So I want to leave you with this to ponder. What exactly happens to a war and to the entire global economy when the single piece of paper holding a ceasefire in place simply runs out of time? Keep a very close eye on those transit volumes, and we'll see you in the next explainer.